Hello, Buffs. Welcome to Heard on the Go with Dr. Mull. I'm your host, Dr. Deandra Mull, Vice Chancellor for Student Life. I'm excited to use this platform to connect you with the stories, conversations, and insights to student life here at CU Boulder. Whether you're a student, Buff family member, staff, or alum, this podcast is for you. Let's get started. Welcome to today's episode of Heard on the Go with Dr. Mull. I'm your host, Dr. Deandra Mull, and today I'm joined by Jeff Morris, our Director of Off-Campus Life. Jeff, can you start by telling us a bit about yourself and what you do in the off-campus life world?
Sure, absolutely. So, again, my name is Jeff. I've been at CU for almost 6 years now, and I came from a completely different environment than you would consider CU or even Boulder, and I come from the East Coast in a very big city, Boston, Massachusetts. And in Boston, I did a lot of work when it came to working with commuter students and off-campus students and supporting that world of what it means to, maybe commute to campus all day or live in an apartment for the first time, and ended up here in CU to kind of continue that journey. And really my role here is helping students, families, staff, faculty, whoever it may be, just help navigate the challenges, but also the opportunities of what it means to live in an off-campus environment. And in our world, that can mean anything for a lot of different people, and whether or not that's going to be living in the city of Boulder, living next to students, living next to non-students, living on your own for the first time, paying rent, utilities, bills. What does that mean? How do I do it?
Adulting.
Adulting, with a capital A. And it's one of those things where we're here to ensure that students are, they're living off campus comfortably, but also confidently, and having it be something that they're not necessarily worried about when it comes to needing to focus on their academics, right? The last thing that you want to focus on when you're trying to get through midterms or finals is the dishes in the sink when you get home because your roommate didn't necessarily put them away. And we know what that can do for a lot of relationships. And so we're here just to make sure that your academic experience is as fruitful as it can be. And really our office, that second that you step foot outside of a residence hall and into the off-campus world, we're here for you. We're here for every single thing that you could imagine when it comes to dealing with a landlord or a lease for the first time, or roommates or non-CU student neighbors, or what it means to live in a community that isn't a residence hall. And for a lot of our students, it's the first time they're living independently.
It is. Well, you have a big job. We have a lot of students who live off campus. While we have about 10,000 traditional undergrads that stay on campus, that means we have a lot more who do not. What's your favorite part about working with our students off campus? They live as close as the hill, as far away as many of their suburbs, and at home with their parents, but they're off campus living. What do you most enjoy about supporting them?
Yeah, really my favorite thing is I think about what are we really doing for our students, and it's helping develop those independent life skills. Those skills that go beyond CU. Those skills that our students are learning and going to utilize beyond their CU experience here. This is the first time that they may be reading and signing a lease, but it's not going to be the last time. And so we don't want to hold their hand and say, oh yeah, this lease says this and that. We want to say, do we understand what this lease says? And do you know what to look out for in the next one that might come across your desk?
And do you know how to get help if you don't know how to interpret the lease, which I think every student should do anyway? Tell us a bit about that service. I know, shameless plug, but tell us about the service students can have when they need someone to help them know what's in the lease.
It's a great question. One of my favorite resources that we have at CU, not just in my office, I'm just blessed that it's in my office, but one of my favorite resources that we have at CU is our free legal advising for all fee-paying students, right? This is something where we have a licensed attorney in our office that will work with any and all students and their families on anything related to landlord-tenant challenges, concerns, questions, issues, anything, right? So this is day one of like, hey, I got a lease in front of me. Before I sign it, I just want to make sure I understand this, because that document's probably 30 pages. It's 4-point font. I can tell you right now that the percentage of students that are reading that thing front to back, not very high. So let us read that with you. Let us guide you through that process, answer those questions, and take advantage of a free service that we can sit down for 60 minutes and just make sure you understand what pen to paper means on your first ever off-campus lease.
And I think that's really important because while I know that we all like to operate in best intentions and think that there's nothing there that will be questionable, There are times where there are things there that we certainly should have reviewed. The attorney can say very clearly, this is not legal. Let's talk to the landlord about removing it from the lease. And so having that, as a student who's, again, as you've mentioned, is moving off campus for the first time, most of us have not read through how many terms and conditions do folks sign that they haven't read. It's really important when you're moving into a space and you don't want to be held liable for something that was never your responsibility. So certainly proud of your team for the work they do in that space, and hopefully students will take advantage of the opportunity to have that review.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's security deposits to questions, roommate mediation, right? Like, just because you're living in on-campus situation might be your first roommate, but again, it's not going to be your last. Like, there are a lot of students, and when we have houses off campus where we have many students, 2 students living together up to 8 students living together, or a Greek life house where we have hundreds, right? Like, the dynamic is always different, but I like to say that we have a resource and a support system in place for all of them.
We do, and that is important. Boulder, let's turn our attention a bit to Boulder. Boulder is a very unique place to live. Folks love living in Boulder. We know that we have many great resources here. We're part of the great outdoors, just the Boulder community in general. What would you say to students about the Boulder broader community? What do they need to know, and how do you make meaning of all the opportunities they have available for them?
Sure. I think, first and foremost is the amount of people that call Boulder a college town. It's important to remind ourselves that not everyone's a college student.
Indeed.
Right. And I think that is a really big aspect of what our office does. How do we live cohabitably in a community that is students and non-students? What does that mean? And for us, it is these students that are moving into the off-campus world for the first time, especially in the city of Boulder. What does that mean? Because the city of Boulder, when you were first year living on campus here, is a completely different city when you are living off campus.
It is.
And so are we exploring all the different aspects of what Boulder is? It's not just the neighborhood that you live in. It's not just the block that you are renting. It is an entire city that is much bigger than I think a lot of people realize. And whether or not that's going to be our hiking trails up on Chautauqua, that's a walk away for a lot of our students, or the downtown area on Pearl Street with shops and restaurants and vibrancy, or if it's going to be the east side of Boulder where we're starting to get into flatland hiking trails and biking and more farmland and the different aspects of what's out there. And so, what's really amazing about students living in Boulder is it keeps Boulder young, I like to say. And Boulder has such a diversity of generation, and is such a diversity of age, but the amount of non-students that I engage with just absolutely love living in this community because they can be reminded every day of the students that live here and the energy and the vibrancy. It's a lot of fun to live in a cohabitative space like that.
It's a beautiful city, so I'm glad that our students get to experience it. We also know that for us, we have a live-on requirement for the vast majority of our first-year students. Living off campus is a bit different. It is. Once you move from the residential experience to off campus where you're managing many things on your own, talk to me a bit about what you think are the biggest differences between living on campus and living off campus.
One of the biggest ones that we work with our students on is, who is your neighbor? And your neighbor might not be a student, right? And for us, it's really this idea of you no longer live in a space that is 100% CU students. And what does that mean for you? Because if you're someone that maybe is a little bit more active and in the social sense, or maybe you want to have a couple friends over for the game, or maybe tailgate before a home game, perhaps.
A couple, not a couple hundred.
Yeah, just a couple.
Yes, we like that.
And I think, what does that mean versus a residence hall room, right? That's different when you live next to someone that maybe has been living in their home for 20, 30 years, raised multiple families. As much as they also are yelling SCO buffs on a Saturday morning, they may not be interested in joining your tailgate, whether or not they're in their living room or in your backyard.
Or experiencing your tailgate at 1 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And if we're tailgating at 1 a.m., let us know. Let's make sure we're maybe not tailgating at 1 a.m., right?
Yes.
But at the same time, I think one of the bigger differences is independency, right? This idea of I'm shifting into a world where I'm going to pay monthly rent. I'm going to pay monthly bills. I'm going to pay water and electric and cable, maybe a parking spot. I have a full kitchen. And when I have a full kitchen, what do you have to do with the kitchen? You got to keep it clean, right? So this is where we get into these moments where I think students are starting to realize, what does it mean to live independently? What does it mean to live on my own? Maybe my fridge is broken. I can no longer put in a work order with Residence Life to get that fridge fixed. We have to go through a whole process that's new to us. and it's commuting. I'm no longer, you maybe have a space that I can walk from classroom 500 feet away to drop off a book to get a new backpack. It's planning ahead. What do my days look like? I tend to see students when they move off campus start to use like planners and calendars a lot more intentionally than they were their first year, in a way, because there's just so much going on. And I think the biggest difference is that you may be living independently, but what we want to make sure our students recognize is that they're not independent of the university, and that our office exists for a reason, to lean on us, to utilize us. That independency may be new for you, but it's something that we work with students for years, and we just want to make sure they're comfortable and confident in that living experience.
Well, and I think to the point of that living experience, something I can recall is recognizing when I was moving from on campus to off campus is feeling like I had to immediately find a lease and sign that right away, because everyone tells you, oh, the best apartments are going to be gone. Give me your perspective on what that looks like. When is a good time to start looking for housing? And then secondly, when do students ideally sign leases?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, in my opinion, one of the longest standing rumors at CU Boulder is I need to sign a lease as early as possible. And the reason is because we do certainly have a really unique housing market in Boulder, like a lot of college towns do across the country, right? And in Boulder, you will typically see the first house go up ready to be leased for August 2026, the next year, right? For example, October 1. It's September 28th right now. I've even worked with students that have already signed leases for next August. And it is.
Did they get those reviewed before they sign those?
I don't know. I hope so. But it's also one of those things. We also don't want to make students feel bad if they did sign a lease, right?
Absolutely.
Like, and there are situations our office strongly recommends that we just put out a formal timeline that is going to be a big part of our educational components this year.
I like that.
And our formal timeline, what we call early leasing, is going to be that period between September and through mid-November, end of November, entering December, right?
Gotcha.
So we really want students during September through December not to be searching for housing, but getting ready for that search.
Yes.
We want folks to know what resources are available to them. So when they're ready to dive in, and when they're ready to start looking at apartments physically, walking around these places, going to these apartments, seeing what's available, they will be prepared.
Yes.
And for us right now, one of the biggest things that we share with students and families is that, hey, we're not going to stop you from signing a lease in October, but I'm going to let you know that house that you're signing October 1, the price that it is right now for $2,000 a bedroom, it's going to be $1,300 in May.
It will.
Let's keep that in mind. So it's one of those pieces where it is, the second one of our first year students signs a lease and you're living on your floor, that whole floor all of a sudden goes, oh my gosh, Johnny down the street he just signed I got to sign mine. And that's where I would say just the excitement, right? But then also the anxiety. It kicks in. Because for those students that didn't sign a lease in October, they feel like they got left behind. Yeah. They feel like it's too late. They're not going to have a place to live. But our office is here to tell you that vacancy in Boulder is always existent. I have never had an opportunity when I had a student come in and say, well, that's it. They're all gone.
Absolutely.
I can't find an apartment. I can't find a house.
And nice apartments and nice houses.
Yeah,
you're not left with places that are undesirable either.
No.
I think that's really important to know. A lot of students think they're getting the best apartments by signing earlier. Sometimes you're paying the largest rate when you sign earlier. And I know, again, I can even think back to realizing that when we moved in, we still had about a 10 to 15% vacancy rate in my first time apartment moving off campus. And then those students who signed later, to your point, got a much lower rate. So not wanting students to also feel so pressured that they pay more for that experience either.
And that's a rental market, right? But especially in a college town.
Yes.
A college town, that pressure. And that is the moment that we have property managers and landlords who are savvy business people take advantage of that pressure.
They're good at their jobs.
Absolutely good at their jobs. And so they're taking this idea of you need to sign early as possible. We're ready to go. If you don't sign today, I can't promise anything, right? But what we do in our office is we like to remind folks that's not necessarily true. And so our timeline, for example, our first housing fair this year is not until November 19th. That's the latest it's been in years here at CU, because we are really trying to show people that it's okay to wait. It's okay to pause. And November 19th is a great day because it's the week before fall break. We want students to come and collect as much information as possible to go home during Thanksgiving and hang out with their family and their parents and have those conversations. Hey, this is what I found at the fair. where is our family at? What can we make decisions on? And when you come back and you're going through finals, you're navigating those decisions. And then our second fair is right when we come back in January for that second semester. And that is our golden timeline. We want January through May to be the new, this is when the majority of our students are signing leases. And honestly, I would say that is when the majority of our students are signing leases.
Yes.
It's just, how do we shift that nervousness, that pre-excitement, this early leasing, the rumor milling? How do we get rid of it? And I think that's a tough hill to climb, but we're getting better and better every year with this. And the most important piece is the outcome, is that we're seeing students save money. We're seeing students feel better about their choices and their leasing opportunities. And we're seeing less students be frustrated with who they decided to be their roommate because they decided in September who they were going to live with for the next year.
Yes.
That person in September may not be your best friend in January when we come back. So we just want to keep in mind all of the things that go into deciding, when am I signing a lease and where am I going to be living?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone in those early weeks are certainly working to make sure they're being a good roommate, being a good representative of all the things that they come to college knowing and learning. And then you just realize that perhaps those aren't the same values, those aren't the same qualities that you want to live with. Maybe you're a person who wakes up at 6 a.m. They're not one who rises until 9 a.m. Making noise in an apartment or a room is very different in that space. And so all those little things start to add up. So I think just for the value of making sure you're signing with someone, because once you sign that lease, there's no revocation period either.
That's a contract.
And so it is a contract. It is a contract that you have to pay out and oftentimes live out. And so that's really going to be important. Speaking of that, I also think it's important to talk about our students as residents in the communities. They're not guests. They're not guests in the Boulder community. They are residential. They are paying good rates to be there. They're contributing to the economy. They are an economic engine in the city. What does it also mean for their responsibilities to their neighbors and to their community?
Yeah, and this is a question that we get a lot, right? And I think it's because when we refer to students off campus, it's like, oh, the students that live off campus. And I always like to remind folks, I was like, oh, the residents?
The residents.
They're not just students.
You are residents.
And these are the really important conversations that we have with non-students at the same time. So our office is able to engage and interact. And one of the focuses that we do is we work with neighborhood associations or nearby neighbors, and we have the same conversation with them that we do with students.
Yes.
And we talk about this idea of like, hey, it's not a students living next to neighbors. It's neighbors living next to neighbors living in a community. And I think everyone could use that reminder every now and then. And for our students that are living off, that are residents of Boulder, that are tenants in the city of Boulder, next to these non-student, it's important that we are discussing and celebrating community. And what does that mean? Because community on campus is going to look very different than community off campus.
It does.
And so for our office, what we like to do is really create those opportunities for community and really create these moments where our students who are new to living off campus as new Boulder residents can meet their neighbor residents. Whether or not that neighbor is going to be a fellow student that goes to CU or a neighbor that has lived there for 40 years, that honestly most likely is an alum. Of the university.
Very likely.
And loves the Buffs, loves the university, and just wants to get to know who just moved in next door for the school year. And this is where we're able to create community through our neighborhood block parties, our off-campus events. And like this is where we have students coming to an event, and even students that live on campus. They want to come out and explore a new neighborhood that they've never seen before they begin their housing search, right? And this is where our long-term residents, let's say, are coming and engaging with students that they live next to for the first time. And for us, it's extremely important that we have this connection and not a bridge that needs to be crossed by two individual groups, but a bridge that everybody can hang out on at the same time. And it's so important. What we always say is like, hey, come to this event because we really want you to meet your neighbor at 4:00 in the afternoon on a Friday, not 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday, because those will be two completely different environments, but we see it often. And if we have maybe a rupture or a ripple in community connection, I think people forget like, hey, I'm also living here for the next 9 months. I'm going to see this person that I just maybe got frustrated with for another 9
And that can make sense if you don't allow it to work through appropriately.
Absolutely. And that's another reason our office exists is mediation, right? And like the connection that we have directly with the Boulder community that has lived here for a very long time, is so important to be able to guide these students into an off-campus living community. And it can be challenging sometimes for off-campus neighbors that are saying, oh, I'm living next to students again. But that's where we come in and we have shifting this idea of an us versus them mentality, which we may have seen in the past. But we're really in this place of now allowing our office to be proactive and engage with students, but also non-student neighbors. Community is better than ever than we've seen it in these neighborhoods.
And I've heard that from residents and students alike, both going with the preconceived notion of what it's going to be and recognizing that we're all looking for the same thing, and that's to live in peace, to have a great experience while we're there, and to build our families or our communities, because those students who are living in a house they formed a different type of family in that space too. And so folks want to have a good time and good environment with their families, regardless if they've been there for 40 years or 40 days. And so certainly stepping in that space and doing that. Tell me, what is your favorite off-campus event that your team does?
I would say one of our favorite events is one that's actually coming up. It's a Halloween-focused event, and we call it Hilloween. It's located in one of our really popular neighborhoods for CU community members, the Hill neighborhood. And why it's my favorite is because we get the largest CU student and non-CU student neighbors all in one place all at once.
Nice.
And it's not just students dressing up in costume. Like, trust me, there's a lot of students that show up in costume, but my favorite is seeing the non-CU families, those neighbors come out with their kiddos.
Can I bring my 2-year-old?
Please do. Yes. Oh my gosh. One of my favorite things that we do at this event, not only do we do a bunch of very supervised pumpkin carving because we want to make sure that we're being safe, but we do films, we do tons of really yummy food. But one of the coolest things is that our office will build these basically standalone individual doors in frames, and we'll set them up in the park. And what happens is that CU students or even the younger kiddos from the neighborhood will dress up and they'll go and they'll trick or treat. And they'll trick or treat at these individual doors that you just look out into a field and there's just all these random doors all over the place, cool. And you don't know what's behind each one. But it's one of our staff members with a bucket of candy. So it's one of those moments where a lot of people can trick or treat for more than once in a Halloween season. But just an incredible way for the neighborhood to not only see the University of Colorado in their neighborhoods, having fun and engaging and really celebrating community pride, but a way for our students to connect with those families and to make these emotional connections in order to develop community and neighborhood pride. That's such a wonderful event, and we're so excited as we're T-minus, I think, 30 days out. So we're getting there. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited, and again, I'll bring my kiddo so she can enjoy and experience it for herself. So I think about the experiences I've had. I'm in my 3rd year here, and one of the very first things I asked when I arrived living in Boulder, tell me some of your favorite spots. And you were very quick to give me some really good spots that are still key to me today. Would you share some of those? Or what are some of your favorite spots, hangouts?
Yeah.
Favorite places to eat for those 21 and older to get a drink?
Sure.
Tell me some of your favorite spots.
Yeah, to be honest, they change all the time, right? And so I think when people ask me this question or they're coming to town, I'm just like, oh gosh, like when was the last time I was there? But one of my, besides just the incredible thing about Boulder, if you're an outdoors person, like this is the spot. This is it. You could be in the center of Boulder and you're 10 minutes away from dozens of hiking trails that are just absolutely beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous, right? So the classic Chautauqua hiking trails, the Sanitas hiking trails, taking a drive up Sunshine Canyon and seeing what the backside of the Flatirons look like, I think that's a hidden gem. This is where I get hesitant to, should I really share this spot with people? But one of my favorite places to go hike is Bald Mountain, because the view that you can get from Bald Mountain is the view that no one sees because the Flatirons are in the way. Yeah. When you're hanging out in Boulder, those Flatirons are so tall. What's on the back side of those? I don't know. I've never seen it before. Bald Mountain is a very short hike where you can take up a picnic, set up a tapestry, a hammock, hang out at the top of it, and look back. You look back at the Rockies, whether or not that's a sunrise or a sunset, and it's one of the most beautiful views I have ever seen. But nobody goes up there because everyone's hiking the Flatiron. Yeah. So that's a little secret. I don't want to see hundreds of people driving up there tomorrow.
Check it out, so thank you.
But it's gorgeous as far as outdoor hiking goes. And then as far as in the city of Boulder, I've recently been a really big fan of Trident Cafe. And Trident Cafe, or just the Boulder Bookstore. And these are places where there's so many different forms of art and medium that you can go and just hang out and relax. And there's no pressure to sit there. You could sit there for hours. They're not going to kick you out. Like there are some stores that are like, hey, I need you to buy something. And you can't just be here. Those are places that I go on my breaks or on a Saturday afternoon, maybe it's a little rainy, and go look through their bins of records, look through vinyl, find something that maybe I've never heard of before so I can bring it home, or find a book, or meet people. One of the most incredible things about the city of Boulder, especially coming from, a bigger city, is just the welcoming vibe. This idea, you walk into a store and someone just going to go, hey, how's it going? I'm thinking that person works there. I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm all set. I'm going to take a, oh, I don't work here. I'm just wondering how you're doing.
Nice.
Wow. And I'll never forget the first time moving to Boulder and just feeling that sense of community before I even felt like I was part of the community. Right. And those are the early days of moving to a new space like this. But it hasn't changed. That wasn't just the new day, folly. That's it. That's what it's like here in Boulder.
I +1 to that. Thank you for dropping some new gems, things that I didn't even know about today. So that's very helpful to me. Any parting advice that you would give to a student who is navigating newly, as whether they're a resident, they're new to the community here, they're looking at what it means for next year, they're excited about it. What gems or what advice would you give them as they take this next step?
Yeah, for us, the next step is a big one. That next step, moving into your first apartment, living with maybe your first roommate, paying your first rent, your bills, walking to campus, living in a community that is so new to you. We just want students to know that you're not alone.
Yes.
That there are so many resources, not just my office, right? Like, our office is focusing on that off-campus living experience when it comes to apartments and living and in cohabitive spaces. But you're not alone. And we want students to engage with us. So we want you to ask those questions. There's never a silly question. And the biggest thing that I always tell students is based off the experience we have with students when they come in with a challenge or an issue or a concern about their off-campus living experience. 90% of the time, those students leave our office with saying, I wish I used your resources earlier.
Yep.
I wish it didn't get to this point where I'm having a tough time right now with my landlord or my roommate or a neighbor. I wish I knew I could come in earlier. And so my one big message is we exist and we're here for you. We're not just sitting in our office thinking we're making this stuff up and just putting posters on the wall for fun. Like, we are here to make sure your off-campus living experience is as comfortable and as confident as possible.
And you all are tried, true, and tethered to student experience and student success. I think that's really important. Thank you for all you and your team continually does to make sure that our students have a great experience. We know it's not always easy. Sometimes you're helping students navigate some really precarious situations. I can think about things you and I have talked about over the last year. And so I'm proud of the work that you all are doing. I'm grateful for it through and through. Thank you for joining us here today. There you have it. Heard on the Go with Dr. Mull and guest Jeff Morris, Director of Off-Campus Life. Students, use Jeff's team as a resource. They're here for you. They're really excited to work with you. So thank you. Thank you to all of our guests, parents, families, everyone listening. Thank you, and Go Buffs.